All right, folks, and we are live. So, good evening, colleagues, comrades, brothers, sisters, and friends. Welcome back to the DNA's Public Forum series, where we're keeping the government's feet to the fire and sharing our key imperatives for a new economy and society in Antigua and Barbuda. I'm Chanel Imhoff, DNA team leader in St. Peter, and your moderator for this evening. For our presenters, just a little housekeeping. Keep your mics muted once you're not speaking. And for our viewers, remember to comment, like, and share the live. If you'd like to share this, just hit your share button. If you need to pass on a link, send them to dnaab.com/watch. For those who are already here, if you could drop some orange emojis in the comments, let us know that you're locked in. Let us know that you're tuned in, and we can get started. So tonight we actually have a packed panel, and before we really get into it, we'll just have a few words from our political leader, Joanne Messiah. Madam Leader, over to you.
Thank you so much, colleague Chanel, and thank you to our listening and our viewing audiences. I just want to say very briefly, thank you. We're glad that you have decided to join us again. We love being in your company. We love sharing our ideas, our plans, our policies, our recommendations for the new economy, for the new Antigua and Barbuda. And as Chanel has said, drop your comments, your feedback, and your suggestions. So sit tight and let's get the show on the road. Over to you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Madam Leader. So, as per usual, tonight we have a featured guest speaker who will be presenting on an economy fueled by sustainability, the case for Antigua and Barbuda. Stanley Barreto is director and head technician for Megapower Antigua and former project developer slash manager for the renewable energy engineering and development company WRB Energy out of Florida. Stanley has extensive experience working with Caribbean island power generation, transmission, and distribution systems, and operations both thermal and renewable. Stanley has also coordinated and managed the integration of electric vehicles and charging stations in new markets across the Caribbean. Stanley has extensive knowledge of renewable energy systems, including practical experience with wind, solar, battery, and hybrid systems. He is a CAD technician, NABCEP, OSHA 10, and has a double master's in business administration and wind energy engineering and development, and is U.S. Solar Installer certified. Stanley has an excellent understanding of distributed generation and grid connection issues, both commercial and technical, and all of this is combined into pushing his tremendous passion for sustainability and the removal of the world's economies from the utilization of carbon fossil fuels. Welcome, Stanley.
Okay, so an economy powered by sustainability. I'm just going to say, when DNA was so kind to approach me on this subject matter, I thought it was something so pressing to our future. And so what I was going to get into is where we are now and how we can be where we'd hope to be. Because I think you can't understand the future without understanding the present. So just a little bit of information to start us off. Antigua now, our fuel import dependency in both the energy and transport sector. As it stands right now, Antigua imports 100% of all petroleum-based fuel and products. These fuels consist of motor gasoline, diesel, heavy fuel oil, kerosene, jet fuel, and LPG. Many of which are used for transport, home, residential solutions, commercial solutions. I think most, if not all, are familiar the variations of fuels and how we use them. The sole supplier of this same fuel is the Antigua and Barbuda West Indies Oil Company, most of which is currently used for electric generation. We import about 4,500 barrels, we utilize 4,500 barrels a day. And as of 2015, our bill at that time, and please note that this bill has most likely gone up in our current day, was 160 million US dollars. We know that in reference to GDP at that time, and this of course is pre-COVID, so of course these numbers might be a lot worse in our current situations, that was about 14% of the entire country's GDP. To put that in perspective, I was going to show a reference to our other sister islands and show that we are higher than we'd like to be. And of course, this is something we can completely eliminate. Also, a little bit of touching on our vehicle aggregation and what we are using right now. We have, this number is a bit conservative. We've been told we have over 50,000 combustion vehicles on the road. Again, this number is prior to 2015, so this number has probably gone up, if not definitely gone up. So just giving people a little perspective of where we are now and what we're spending and how this has been, should I say, a detriment to our economy and where we can be. So again, referencing against our sister islands, you can see here in the orange, we have Antigua. And then if you look in the green approximation, you have sister islands like Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. We are noticeably higher. For example, a comparison here is in 2013, you have, let's just pick any one of the green nations, you have about 7% of GDP going towards fuel importation. And then for us, you are back at that 14%. So that is double what our neighbors are using as it currently stands. And what is happening if we switch? We are a little bit behind the curve, and there are a lot of islands advancing in these transitions, most of which are right next door to us at St. Kitts and Nevis. As you see here, it quickly says Caribbean's largest solar plus storage project underway. This relates to a 35 megawatt solar project with about 45.7 megawatt hours of battery backup. What that means in simple terms, that project will supply about 35 to 40% of St. Kitts' power needs, already offsetting a massive fuel bill for them. And then you also see here mentioning in Jamaica, and I will mention that this is back in 2016. So these numbers are getting better and better. It's mentioning here at 8.54 cents was the winning bid for a 33.1 megawatt PV project in Jamaica. What that means is that this project was interconnected to the Jamaican power grid and was able to sell power to Jamaica's JPS at 8.5 cents. And put it in perspective, if you look at your electricity bill today, you'll see that our fuel variation rate is at 50 cents EC. If we were to do a comparative, and let's say we quickly change that 8.5 cents into EC, so we can all talk on the same page, that's 23 EC cents versus 50 cents. We can see there's a dramatic opportunity for savings. And so long story short, even if you were to add transmission, distribution, managing human resources, paying all of our wonderful Antiguans appropriate salaries, let's say we add a 30% surplus to that, you're still not even getting close to the 50 cents. And on top of that, we will no longer have a loss of foreign exchange, and we can keep a lot of this power production happening within our own nations. I'm going to continue on here. Does it make sense? I'm just kind of furthering the point of, are renewables cost effective for us right now? This is from an IRENA study done in 2018. I just want to mention we are already at the point where wind and solar are cheaper than all fossil fuel-based power production methods. It's not a what if, it's not a it might be. They are absolutely cheaper than fossil fuel production. So the concern of whether or not it is cost effective to make the transition is not a valid argument anymore. And for example, even if a nation were to say, we can't bear this potential cost burden, it is not on us necessarily to bear it, because many markets open themselves up to IPPs, independent power producers, Antigua being one of them, of course, and it'll allow us to access new technology managed by reputable sources and achieve these very, very low and competitive prices. What would it do for our economy if we switched? I mean, I can share a lot of what the nations around us have done, and I can talk about perspective on how this would be good, but what would it do for every single one of us looking for work or looking for new opportunities? So you're going to see two charts here. This is BAU, business as usual scenario. And this is where we stand right now. And I have it mentioned here for vehicles and for power generation. And if we were to switch, NDC refers to nationally declared contributions. That is what we expect to do if we were to change to a largely based renewable grid and transport sector. You can see here that the job market for BAU, business as usual, total jobs, and this is just referencing power generation, by the way. You can see on annual, you're getting about 100 to about 130 new jobs a year. If we were to switch to renewables, we can empower people all over the island, because renewables offer things that fossil fuel generation very much so can't do. It can decentralize our grid. It can provide microgrid opportunities. It can provide residential, commercial opportunities. It can empower people in a multitude of ways, providing new, better paying jobs, while also keeping more money in the country for discretional income, for inflation control, because as we continue to export our foreign exchange, there's always the concern of what are we doing as a nation when the big concerns come up, such as massive hurricanes, or should I say situations like COVID, where we have to find means to facilitate and keep the economy going. And then to the right here, you see the vehicle stock. As I mentioned, we're over 50,000 vehicles, combustion vehicles. If we were to switch, and I think it's important to mention the vehicles, if we were to switch, these vehicles will play an integral part in managing the grid. A lot of persons are not familiar, but electric vehicles have bidirectional charge capability. And what that simply means is if we were to switch every car on the road in Antigua to electric, and we were to transition to renewables, these vehicles could easily plug into a charger and help manage grid stability during the day. And for the markets that I've worked in, you could actually compensate people for their vehicle, and by, should I say, providing grid stability, frequency control, additional features, and something you'd never find in a combustion vehicle. But the two have to live in symbiosis. So I would encourage people, you can have one without the other, but we would like to see both happen in sequence. And sorry, I'm going to keep going here. How do we get to this place? How do we access these new opportunities? And how do we empower the people? So long story short, there are four options down here: distributed generation, microgrids, smart grid technology, and a decentralized utility structure. I'm going to explain exactly what that means. So distributed generation, excuse me guys for my stutters here, refers to the generation of electricity from multiple sources across variant locations, all assisting to the ultimate goal of grid stability and reliable power supply. What that means in simple terms is, I think most are familiar that we have one main power generation point in Antigua, that's Crabs Peninsula. What renewables would allow you to do is localize your power production in a specific area. So for example, I think a lot of us have seen the solar farm at the airport or at Bethesda. That is a minute example of the many things that we can achieve here. So for example, let's say the city or town of St. John's. If we were to localize a wind turbine off the bay of St. John's and then have that powered or integrated with a hybrid battery system, or even you integrate with solar as well in the commercial sector, you could power St. John's within its own opportunity. It'd still be interconnected to everybody else, but you'd provide an opportunity for someone to localize and work in that market and not necessarily even have to travel very far if they worked in St. John's and possessed the skill set. And then, for example, as we move on microgrids, it's a bit different, shares a lot of similarities to distributed generation. It refers to isolated or decentralized power supply sources, maintaining a load demand of a specific area or location that has the ability to operate autonomously or connected to the national grid at desired or needed conditions. What that simply means is, similar to how I mentioned St. John's there, if you had, say, a microgrid out in, Newfield, just for example, and people were working out there and they had the opportunity of just managing that microgrid as a job opportunity, and you had brownouts in the other parts that weren't necessarily managed by renewables, they could actually cut themselves off from the rest of the island and be powered by their own self-sufficiency or their own renewables. And microgrids is a great opportunity to integrate with distributed generation. They can work apart or they can work together. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Long story short, most, if not all, of Antigua could be a collection of distributed generation and microgrids working in sequence with each other. And then you have smart grid technology. Smart grid technology refers to energy management, smart meters, load consumption assessment, should I say smart appliances, all of which help us to, for example, stop wasting energy, better understand when we are peaking our energy demand. And I think for anybody involved in power generation, you know how critical it is to understand when the peaks and the troughs of power generation occur. It'll allow you to better manage the grid. And so, for example, smart grid technology allows you to reduce your losses while also managing the grid a lot better. And then, for example, the last point, decentralized utility structure. This is a bit wordy, but what it simply means is we will not get rid of utility. There will never be a need to not have the utility, right? And then should I say, my 9 years of doing this, I would always tell people, we're not out here to get rid of utilities. I worked for utilities for 5 years. What we are trying to do is remove the burden from any one location. And so to decentralize the utility structure, for example, the utility could specialize in customer service, transmission, distribution, and management of the grid. And you could have a collection of parties, whether it's a commercial entity, whether it's residential homes, with their own power supplies, or for example, if we wanted to build a larger manufacturing sector, they could all self-supply, be integrated with the utility, pay a very reasonable fee for utility support and backup, and then also provide grid stability through their own means of having a decentralized utility structure or sharing within from their own generation sources. So long story short, the desire for, or the ability for Antigua to get from where it is now at $161 million US dollars to where we can keep that foreign exchange in the country, it's not that outlandish. And to put it in perspective, I know I mentioned Jamaica and St. Kitts. I just wanted to mention the project in Jamaica cost, and bear with me here for 2 seconds, it cost about, at its time, it was $62 million. And the price of renewables has gone down. And the project in St. Kitts, which would, again, take care of 40% of their power demand, was $70 million. We have yet to even get to the $161 million. And I think it's important to mention, when we make these investments and we remove ourselves from non-return investments, such as fossil fuels, because we don't produce fossil fuels in Antigua, we now engage in a growth pattern where we are now self-supplying. We are no longer having to send out all of our foreign exchange. And for example, these projects are achievable. I'd mentioned we spent $161 million as it already stands. And if just alone on, let's say we mimicked St. Kitts, that $70 million is not even half of that number. If we were to spend that $161 million for perspective, that would put us at 92 megawatts of solar renewables, or for wind, we probably put us at about 75 megawatts of wind power, which easily, and again, I'm running these numbers off the top of my head, could easily power about 40 to 50% of this nation as it currently stands. And so we would then recover that income based on the generation alone, but we would never recover that income if we were to continuously spending it in a fossil fuel-based economy. So in a nutshell, where we are and where we could be, and I think it's very much achievable with the budgets that we are already spending in other facets. And that's it, guys.
Thank you so much, Stan. Everybody, I think, agrees with me that that was a very educational, poignant presentation. We are blown away with the wealth of information presented tonight. So if you agree with me, you can drop some applause emojis in the comments. So for the next few minutes, we'll be taking some questions, feedbacks, and comments from the audience and our panelists for Stanley. So if you have something to say, if you have a question to ask, you can drop it in the comments. If you want to ask it privately, feel free to send us a direct message in one of our inboxes.
Okay. Guys, I just want to say
Yeah.
forgive me for any stutter or nervousness. Should I say it was a huge compliment to DNA to ask me to do this. And as a local Antiguan, I really do think it's a great opportunity to talk to all of you. So if I had any nervousness in my voice, do forgive me.
Well, if you were nervous, I would love to hear you when you are not nervous.
Okay, good.
And
Great to hear.
very engaged for the entire time. Learn something, definitely learn some new things tonight. I think we all can agree that we have, you know. And we have some comments here that we can go through. Jamil says more young people to learn about this. So everyone needs to share the live. Yes, Jamil, you have the right idea. As long as you're on right now, remember to like, comment, share the live as well so we can reach as much people as possible. You know, here at the DNA, it's prosperity for all, not just for some. And colleague Onisha says you were great. So that the general. I think that would be the general
Thank you,
consensus
guys.
that
Thank you. I appreciate that.
you were definitely great. Amma Phil says you are excellent, Stanley. Thank you. So thank you so much. I think I think we have some more comments we can go through here. Just scrolling up because we have a lot to go through. Someone says here that the framework would play a very important role in the technological advances in Antigua, which is very true. Right?
And should I say, I don't want it to escape the fact, should I say, your wonderful leader, Miss Messiah, had asked a poignant question when we first talked about this. And I just want to share this with everybody. The number one question I get is, would this be difficult to train Antiguans in doing this? And the absolute answer is no. A lot of this could be 6 months to 8 months vocational training. I myself actually offer training for a lot of people, for example, when it comes to electric vehicle servicing or solar and battery installations. It's very straightforward. And I mean, long story short, it could provide new job opportunities where people can stay closer to their home, closer to their families, and manage their own grid stability within their own area. And you can get a sense of pride to say, well, you know what? I'm managing the power supply where I live. And then other persons can say the same where they live. It's truly not a difficult undertaking. You don't have to go through 5 to 8 years of whatever amount of school. I will give the disclaimer. I did all that, but long story short, I will say there's a ton of opportunity for everybody, and it does provide more opportunity if we make these transitions.
Right. And I'm glad you kind of segued into this because one of the concerns that a lot of people have is about jobs. They say, we advancing to these new technologies, they're going to be taking away jobs. But as we would have discussed in previous conversations, that is actually the opposite. Could you go into a bit more about that for me, please?
Sure, sure. So, for example, let's say no one's ever worked in power generation before, and you're looking for a better opportunity. You've always liked the idea, and you've never been a fossil fuel fan. For example, just to be completely blunt, in nature, oil is actually toxic for the human body. If you were to put it against your skin, you could actually get dizzy or sick. So they've always said, well, you know what? I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to operate with that. But I really like the concept of indigenous power, clean power. What do I do? There's a multitude of opportunities here. For example, carpenters could be trained to install these systems, whether it's ground mount or roof mount systems. People who like the technical side of it could be involved in maintaining or observing the software programs that manage these renewable systems. And then you also have the technical training on just how is this wired, how is this done, how is all of the points of contact made, how is it coupled, and should I say, you have opportunities for everybody. You don't have to say, oh shoot, well I never liked electrical, or I was never a computer guy, or I was never a hands-on person. You can be one of any one of these things. And should I say, I don't mean to be in any way sexist when I said he or she can do all of these things. So I just want it to be known that there is an opportunity in this new field of energy. There's an opportunity for everybody. And it really doesn't come down to just saying, oh, well, you know what? I don't like one part. There's so many different parts about renewables that you don't find in fossil fuel generation. Because many times with fossil fuel generation, you have a point of production at the power generation plant. You have engineers who manage that power generation through a very sophisticated management system. And then you have guys who are operating the lines, the transmission distribution lines. They will still very much be needed no matter how, unless we integrate new methods of transportation of power. And then you have a localized utility. And so, for example, those who operate at the utility many times are saying, well, you know what, I only have the job of bills, customer service, or internal management, so to speak, but I really don't necessarily like being inside.
All right. I'm not hearing Stanley. We seem to have lost him for a quick second. It looks like he's back. You have to
Sorry, can
bear
you
with
guys
us
hear
on the
me?
technology. Yes, we
Sorry, yeah, no,
can. Yes, we can.
I was just saying, long story short, through the opportunity of microgrids, you can remove people from localizing in one office or saying, well, you know what, I have to drive to town to go to work. Or no, you could stay exactly where you live and manage your own grid, or you could integrate different approaches to it. Say, well, you know what, again, like I said, you don't want to go on the roof, you don't want to integrate lifting or work with lifting panels or lifting structures, you can help in the management side of the systems. And then, for example, if that doesn't apply to you, you can do the different facets. You can be the hands-on person. You can be the person lifting, carrying, installing, or then you could just be a technical person who says, well, you know what, we're going to do my area, my village, and I've learned how to do this. And again, that is sex agnostic. The great thing with this is that a lot of these opportunities do not require heavy lifting, do not require scaling massive, I want to say, poles or working with transmission distribution lines, because you localize it in your area. And again, this is something renewables can do that power generation from fossil fuels really limits you to do.
Right. That is excellent. That is definitely something that associate ourselves with here at the Democratic National Alliance. We have another comment here from colleague Onisha who says, with DNA, we create a whole industry. Right, that's the way to go. New, fresh, dynamic. Time to grow up and move up. Tourism is not our only bread and butter. That is definitely correct. Thank you so much for answering that question, Stanley. It seems as if most of the feedback we're getting is, very, very positive. The
Yes,
more some more
yes.
praise for you
And
there, Stanley. Very great presentation, well put together. Thank you.
no
So
problem.
I'm
I would
seeing
just
that
say
our
one
colleague.
thing. Sorry to disturb,
Go ahead.
Shana. To
Go right
Anisha's
ahead.
comment, and forgive me if I don't mean to brutalize your name there, Anisha. Tourism, as Mr. Goodwin put it, is a monocrop product that we provide in Antigua, and it is pretty much the only thing we have. And one of the things when I first spoke with DNA about this subject matter is we can be an energy exporter. If we do things like this, we can supply our sister islands, we can engage in new and very exciting opportunities because our topography is different. We're not a volcanically active nation. We are not a hilly nation like some of our sister islands who struggle to find the room to put these systems in place. We are perfectly suited to do these things. And for example, let's say 10, 20 years down the road, we integrate with the grids of our sister islands. We could supply them power and provide a new opportunity of revenue stream for our country.
Excellent. And that the way to go. Marie says she's very late but present. Welcome. I was looking for you. That's one of the names always here. So once again, good evening and thank you to the persons who are joining us. If you're on right now, remember to like, comment, and share the live. Drop a comment. Let us know that you're listening. Let us know where you are. Send us your comments, questions, and feedback. We have another interesting question here, Stanley. Don't if you'd be in a position to answer. And they're asking, in light of the recent sales of shares in West Indies oil, would you say in years to come these investments would be worth less or yield no dividends? That's a very interesting question. What do you think?
Um, long story short, I don't think they would be worthless. I do think that any distribution company like West Indies Oil, because that's really what they are, I do think they do some formats of refinery, but they would have to change as an organization. And any organization with that kind of revenue and that kind of capital has tremendous opportunity to make changes. And I think a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of the nations leading, or a lot of the organizations leading the change, are fossil fuel organizations because they realize what they are currently doing is archaic, but they have so much money and so much capital that they're saying, well, you know what? We don't want to be left behind. we are going to start pushing the change before the change pushes us. Because if the change pushes them, they'll be too far behind, and yes, they will become obsolete. But what I do see from a lot of these organizations, similar to West Indies Oil or fossil fuel-based organizations, is they're saying, we are an organization that should remain technology agnostic. If we're going to stick to our guns for fossil fuels, yes, we're going to be done. But if we are to be practical with what we have and the capital that we have, we can advance new technologies and spend our money in the right place. So to answer your question, Kelton, I don't. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear me. I see a little indicator at the top. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you
Okay, so
now.
yeah. Okay, so I mean, long story short, if they have a progressive 5-year plan, no, it would not be worthless. If they see fossil fuel as the main source of income for the next 5-10 years going forward, I think I've kind of hit on that one. They will fall behind the curve.
Right. So essentially, if they change along with what's happening around the rest of the world, then it would not be a wasted investment then.
No,
As long as
and should
that
I
change.
say, yeah, and I would dare to hope that West Indies Oil has advancement plans for transition. They are considering different opportunities, and of course, these are all in the sustainable fields. I would hope so.
Well, I think we would all hope so, you know, because this is something that really affects us all, either at a macro or a micro level, as you would have pointed out
Absolutely.
in your and we have to be, we have to be, the vanguards of that change as well, right? So, Stanley, once again, that was an excellent presentation. I think we all can agree that you are going to be a bit of a tough act to follow. We are very thankful that we're very thankful that you agreed to be our guest speaker for tonight. And by the feedback, I can see that our audience was very much engaged and very much educated by what you have had to say. Some persons are actually wondering how you look, who is the person behind all of these
Okay,
facts.
my apologies.
You know,
Hi, everybody.
meet Mr.
Um,
And there he
just
is.
like everybody else, I'm doing this from home, so excuse me. Still in my work attire.
Yeah, nothing at all wrong with that. Thank you so much. So, guys, that is the face behind the voice behind of all of that amazing information. Stanley Barreto. Stanley, once again, thank you so much for your presentation. And for those who would have sent feedback, would have sent comments, thank you so much for engaging. And we can just give our guest or featured speaker a round of applause in the comments.
Thank you,
They
DNA,
have
for considering me. And should I say thank you, everybody, for listening? And should I say I hope we all see a lot of these things happening in our near future.
excellent. Thank you so much, Stanley.
Take care,
All
guys.
right,
I'm gonna.
so for those of you who are just joining us, we just had a presentation from Mr. Stanley Barreto. It was very educational and intentional. We're speaking about sustainability as one of the key imperatives for the new economy and society in Antigua and Barbuda. And we're going to go straight into the second half of tonight's public forum because we have a packed panel tonight. We are continuing that conversation we had last month, and we, of course, are adding to it. So, without any further ado, we are going to get into our first panelist. So, our first panelist is actually a DNA founding member. Bruce Goodwin is a man who is convinced that politics and statecraft offer the best possibilities to lift his country and its people to the heights of sovereignty and self reliance. Over to you, colleague Bruce. Hmm.
Am
Okay.
I on?
Yes, you are.
Can
Go.
you hear me?
Yes, we can. Loud and
You're
clear.
hearing me? Thank you. I've been having some problems here. I think my internet is, as usual, me some trouble. I hope I will be able to remain online for the duration of my brief presentation. But let me thank Stanley, our good friend, for that most excellent presentation we need to hear and the kinds of things we want Antigua to listen to. Now, we continue with the theme, the imperatives, the imperatives as we would propose them for restructuring and diversifying society in this beautiful island of ours. And just very briefly to review that last time I looked at three issues. Firstly, the redeployment of the nation's workforce for efficiency and productivity. And then I looked at the reconceptualization of work, mainly to ensure flexibility and an easier working experience and a more enjoyable work experience for our people. And thirdly, I looked at the government's role in creating the enabling environment that will give opportunities to businesses to be sustainable and profitable. Those are the three issues I touched on last time. This evening, what I want to look at is a model that we can embrace for the rapid development of business units, of firms. Okay, we're looking at the whole business of ensuring that there is a model, an economic model in place and supported more or less by all stakeholders to ensure that Antiguans and Barbudans can act easily on the construction of their own businesses, whether they are micro operations, small business operations, medium-sized businesses, or large businesses. And what I want to offer in terms of this economic model is a view that we can look at me as all these different business, and when we think of small, medium, micro, etc., large, there are different ways of establishing which sector business will fall in. Mainly, it is a question of how many employees you have. If you're one person, two-person operation, pretty much your micro business. If you have maybe up to 10 or 15 employees, you're small. Beyond that, you're etc. Do not exist in a vacuum. Businesses must be part of a supply chain. They must have opportunities to market their goods. They must have services, and they must have opportunities to purchase their inputs. So what we need to understand is that this just doesn't happen by chance. This supply chain that we would establish to ensure a diversity of firms, of businesses in the economy, it doesn't happen by chance. It has to be enabled by a set of including legislation, etc. We would look at the central unit of the model being a large business, what we would call a mother plant, a medium scale to large scale business, what we would call and the activities of that mother plant will create opportunities for smaller units, smaller firms who will be linked to that mother, either as suppliers of goods or services or as consumers of goods or services generated by the mother plant. Now, take for instance our hotel sector. Let's consider our hotel sector as one mother plant. Okay, we have about 3,000 hotel rooms in Antigua. So let us have one big mother plant which has 3,000 rooms for their guests. And of course, that is a firm, an economic unit which operates these 3,000 rooms and all that goes in operation of 3,000 rooms. Need a number of products. They're going to need linen, bathroom, bed linen, etc. They're going to need uniforms for their employees. They're going to need food and beverage for their kitchen operations, etc. Now, consider a mother plant comprising 3,000 hotel rooms, pretty high-end hotel rooms. You know that their expenditure on the inputs is very, very significant. In Antigua, I would suggest at least 95% of that expenditure of this mother plant, our 3,000 room hotel plant, goes overseas. They import 95% of their goods, of what they consume, whether goods or services. So the idea then is, how can we factor in the operations of many smaller plants? How can we link them plant to supply them with their inputs and to supply them with their services? That is more easily said than done, because it requires regulation, it requires for the mother plant to do that. So if we are going to have our hotels facilitate our labor, facilitate the labor of our people organized in businesses, in firms, then of course we have to give them some incentive to ensure that they desist and cease from importing 95% of their inputs and inputs. Of course, what that does is create work and create business opportunity for firms overseas. If they're importing 95% of the inputs to satisfy 3,000 hotel rooms, you're several millions of dollars leaving this country to create working opportunities for firms in wherever those countries are that they're importing their stuff from. So that is how we look at the model of the mother firm, the mother plants. Another example would be, say, a tannery. Let's look at a tannery. A tannery is an operation that takes rawhides and skins generally and refines them and transform them into a product that can be used to make shoes, to make handbags, to make various types of accessories, to make clothes, etc. Why is it that all our leather products virtually are imported from outside? Tannery in Antigua, obviously, and although many years ago there were a number of fledgling workshops dealing with leather, at that time, of course, in the 80s, there was a tannery in Montserrat, which a lot of us used to order from to do our products. That was destroyed in the hurricane of 1989, Hurricane Hugo, I think. Since then, we have not had the opportunity to import leather easily into Antigua, and all those leather workshops at the time have gone out of business. What if we decide, whether the government is going to pioneer, going to facilitate a group or a settlement to organize a tannery in this country? We have the opportunity of tannery as a mother plant, buying skins from the abattoir, from butchers, etc., and supplying finished skins of good quality to a number of workshops who will be engaged in the production of shoes, accessories, garments, and all sort of thing out of leather. I give those two examples to show what we mean by this concept of the mother plant and the satellite plants. We have so many opportunities to buy goods and services in Antigua. Take, for instance, the market of the school uniforms. We have 25,000 school children. All of them must buy maybe 3 sets of uniforms every year. They must buy school bags, etc. With a vibrant leather working sector comprising several small firms leather from a central tannery, you can see that we have the opportunity to manufacture all those shoes, all those school bags, etc. for these school children. But the point is, this cannot happen automatically. It takes government intervention to ensure that that market is created and sustained for the local producer. In that context, I just want to mention that we have a situation where the global trading system is now regulated by the World Trade Organization, which came into operation maybe some 30 years or so ago. Now, the World Trade will regulate, for instance, that we must open our, we must allow goods from China and wherever else to come in our economy and be treated just as we treat our local production. What that does, of course, we have never had the opportunity to develop our business sectors effectively. It makes it pretty much impossible for us to compete with the imports, with the countries from which we are importing. So what I'm saying is that we have to determine whether or not we are going to allow to be marginalized, to be sidelined by the World Trade Organization, whose overall benefits for the past 30 years have gone to large countries, and in particular to China. China is the country which did most from the essence of the World Trade Organization, which and these benefits, of course, have enabled China to become the global manufacturing juggernaut and put them in such a place they can even now think of restructuring the ancient Belt Road Initiative to even further their dominance of trade. We will have to that we are not going to allow the World Trade Organization to dictate our economic reality, even if it comes to canceling our membership with the World Trade Organization, because our thrust in our move to develop our economy and create opportunities for our people, we cannot accept that there are any sacred cows like the World Trade Organization who is going to determine exactly what our trade patterns are and how we can or cannot develop our own sectors. Another ancillary point is I want to mention is the fact that today, in this modern age, we have for the first time globally where small businesses are considerably impacted by the fact that, unlike in former times where economies of scale would apply very seriously to the of manufacturing businesses, etc., that is not so today. There are niches where small businesses have, because to begin with, the technology and trading patterns make it possible for us to buy a variety of small machines, of manufacturing plants, small scale and medium, from China, even through Alibaba, or from India through India Mart, so that any small operation, for instance, can buy the equipment that you need to operate, say, a mill to grind corn, food processing. You have a small farmer doing 5 acres. He can decide, okay, rather than plant corn and sell corn, let me sell cornmeal. You can buy a mill through Alibaba or India Mart, which can take your 5 acres of corn, and that's a lot of corn, and you can make your own cornmeal right here in your backyard and sell it as organic cornmeal. And that is just an examples I'm giving to show you that today, in the modern dispensation that we have in the world today, it is entirely feasible for us to generate large numbers of small firms, manufacturing, processing, and so forth, by creating that enabling environment, led, of course, it has to be, where the market is there for your products and where the market is there for you to purchase your input. That is how we go about creating a small business sector where manufacturing, food processing, and other types of innovative businesses can flourish. It is the concept of the mother plant and the satellite plants. And I'm going to end there for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleague Bruce, for that excellent presentation. And I'm very glad you were able to stay with us for the duration of your presentation. The technology definitely worked in your favor this
I'm
time
happy about
around.
that.
So thank you. Definitely, most definitely. And we have much more persons joining us right now. Colleague Dalso says, very impressive, colleague Bruce. And I agree. I most definitely agree. And Dawn says, we in the diaspora are interested in being a part of rebuilding Antigua, and that is what we love to hear. We're very happy that you would join us, Dawn. We have another comment here from Gregory, who says, if we're giving hotel a tax break, then they must stay away from giving competition to the local man who can't afford to spend as much money as they can. A policy must be in place to protect the local market, most definitely. And we have some comments right now from Madam Leader.
Not hearing.
Turn on your mic, Madam Leader. We're not hearing you. She hear it?
Are you hearing me?
And she talking now.
Yes, we're hearing
I
you
am.
loud and clear.
Okay,
Now,
great. Okay, great. I was saying, thanks, colleague Bruce. Another fabulous presentation, very thought provocative. As you were speaking, I just felt compelled to say that in order for us as a collective, everybody in the society, to accept and appreciate the thinking of the DNA, specifically as you speak about other sectors, other interests, other businesses being integrated into the mother system, it is going to be important for us to change that culture that has been ingrained in us for too many years. And that being that anything produced local is substandard, it's not good enough. And if we're to drive the new economy, fueled by our own people, our interests, our passions, our skills, our abilities, and our talents, we have got to recognize, to accept, to boost, to encourage, and to support local industries at varying levels. I mean, we operate in a in an environment now, in a world, certainly where manufacturing goes, certainly where agricultural and agribusiness and agri products are concerned, where there are certain minimum standards which have to be met. And so, if we're going to go back into the business, say, for example, of pasteurization of milk, then clearly we would have to ensure, we meaning at whether at the regulatory level, would have to ensure that all the cyto and phytosanitary measures are fully in place before that product is let onto the market. And so I just want to encourage all of our followers here tonight and persons who will listen after we have come off air to reorient your thinking and to be so patriotic in your outlook to say that what we produce here is good enough not only for us but for export. We have to be the first set of patronizers for everything that is made in Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you.
Thank you for that thank you for that intervention, Madam Leader. And I think the persons in the comments definitely agree. Jamil says, Bruce, you're touching on things I've always wondered about. So once again, a very educational presentation where we can definitely learn something. Yes, that's a fact. We need to have better trading options as states. I think we all can agree that is absolutely necessary. Colleague Kimberly said, excellent, Bruce, always on point, most definitely. We had another comment. I'm just looking for it. You have to bear with me. You have to siphon through. We have quite a few here. Gregory says again, another problem with some hotels, they are now getting into small business areas like jeep tours, dive shops, catamaran tours, etc., which is taking away from the local man. Taxi operators would normally take us to different places on the to do these things. Right, that is a very interesting perspective right there, and something that I actually did not think of. So thank you for sharing that with us, Gregory. Alstine says, well said. We have Marie. If it's one thing, when Miss Messiah speaks, she's amazingly convincing and articulate. Thank you for that, Marie. Checking here. And Jamil says,
Madam
now a place like Barbuda should be food hub of the West Indies with its diverse sea life. Malika, you're saying something?
Yes, I definitely wanted to jump in.
Okay.
That comment you made by Red, that I think it was Gregory who was highlighting the fact that the concept that the DNA put forward through Bruce of the mother plant and having linkages, right, to the mother plant. Asking the question, how is that this, or how does that work when you have the hotels themselves, the hoteliers, who are themselves now getting into the ancillary services that would have been tied into and linked to that plant if we accept the hotel as a mother plant. And what he is raising is absolutely critical and salient. And I don't think that currently, as a nation, we are really stopping to think and to ask those questions. Because the concept that Bruce laid out takes for granted that, one, there is a mother plant, and two, there is some coherency in the way the macroeconomic system operates around that plant. And that system, although it is linked into the mother plant, is somewhat autonomous. In other words, it foresees that there are other operators, right, feeding into. That is the way you grow the wealth, obviously, and that is the way you find gainful employment, develop other sectors, and to develop the skills and trades that Madam Leader would have spoke to. So I think that it is important that we address that tension that we currently have, particularly in the hotel sector, right? Where you have hoteliers who are themselves, as he has rightfully stated, in real competition, right? With small business owners and operators, and the extent to which that can be sustained and the extent to which it does harm to the sort of multivaried type of activity and entry points that we wish to have in a sector like that. Just wanted to make that point. I don't know if Bruce want to follow up on that, but I think it's
yes.
It's salient.
I will say something on that. Okay, am I on? You're hearing me?
Yes, you.
Okay, good. No, that is an extremely important matter. That question is extremely important and strikes to the heart of the whole situation, where regulation and the enabling environment, as we have been discussing, are most critical. And government's role in all this is most critical. We have a situation here where it's open sesame for the hotels, for the foresters. You come, you say you want to do a hotel, okay, you get all the tax holidays and all the concessions, etc., you need for many, many years to come. And rather than stick to your hotel business, a few years later, you're operating tours, you're operating boat sea, water sports stuff and that. And this is totally unacceptable because you are coming as a foreign investor, you see advantages that you can take. You can take advantage of other types of business opportunity that you never thought of doing when you came in your hotel. And the government simply opens the door to you and allows you to do anything you want. To the subturn of local initiative where such kinds of smaller scale activities should definitely be reserved for Antiguan nationals, for Antiguan businesses, you see. So that kind of loose environment where do as you like, you're a hotelier and you come and do as you like, and you displace any local business you like, even taxi business and so forth you're running, it is completely unacceptable and it has to be regulated within the framework of the enabling environment that we are talking about. This idea of protecting your indigenous business sector is very important. This is why I adverted to the role of the World Trade Organization, because they have been given an enormous amount of power over the global economy, which impacts, that power impacts or has impacted, clearly we have seen it impact very, very negatively on the economies of countries in Africa, in Asia, in the Caribbean, we have not developed the economies to the extent where they can compete on equal footing with the Europeans, with the Americans, with the Chinese, etc. So you have to think of a concept known as differential, arrangements and so forth, special and differential arrangements and agreements. Our negotiators, when they went to with WTO, they should have negotiated a proper regime with respect to our needs to develop and to create small industry and so on to suit our own men. We cannot continue with this situation where, because of World Trade Organization regulations, we have to keep our markets open to everything that other nations want to dump or sell freely, whatever. They just everything into your economy, and you have to take it because you're a member of World Trade Organization. And in taking it, you simply diminish and make it pretty much impossible for your own economy to develop along the basis of manufacturing and other areas of diversification, etc. I mean, look at the situation in Antigua where most of our school uniforms, I mentioned our 25,000 school children, most of their uniforms are imported from Vietnam. So that is a total disgrace. How can we use our mother plant then of schools, because the schools comprise a mother plant too? How can we use them to empower factories in Vietnam when we here are crying out for those opportunities for ourselves? And this is what we mean when we talk about the enabling environment, government playing a very strong role in ensuring that we have the opportunity to diversify our economy, to the skills, to develop the hundreds of thousands of small workshops that we know can flourish as links to the mother plants in our country. That's my view on that.
Excellent responses, as usual. We have a very important question here from Jamil. He asks, but my most important question though is, what is the first set of things you guys would invest in if you're elected at the next election? Madam Leader, would you like to take a crack at this question?
Yes, thank you, Jamil, for that question. There are so many. I'm sure you recognize this things that I need of urgent attention in Antigua and Barbuda. But certainly, we would have to look within the context of the diversification of our economy. We would have to look at what areas are we seeking to diversify first. Certainly, we have spoken a lot about agriculture and the blue economy, and the opportunity to encourage locals to get invested in agro-industry, to go into the value-added products. So we would be seeking to set up a system in which our people or people in Antigua and Barbuda would be afforded the opportunity. Let me just say, when I say Antigua and Barbuda, I also include the diaspora, who would be prepared to make that level of investment in Antigua and Barbuda. And the government would, of necessity, create the enabling environment in order to facilitate these people's, these investors, these local direct investors' ambitions, their dreams, and so on. That is one. Two, we certainly just spoke about sustainable resources. That is another area in which we would be giving our full attention so that we could look to move towards the transition into renewables and so on. That is a second area. And certainly we would also be making a move towards innovation and technology. We have a number of young people here, and the pandemic has shown their hidden talents and skills and so on. And we want to create, we've spoken about it in our policy document, what we're calling technoparks, where young people would be brought together in a central location. And we would be encouraging them to design apps, to design other technological technologies that would assist us in our view and version of a diversified economy. So these are three areas that we would be seeking to pay attention to. Of course, it's not an industry per se, but the whole aspect of reducing the cost of living certainly is something that we have decided has to be urgently tackled in Antigua and Barbuda as a part of our commitment to creating not only prosperity for all, but the good life for all in Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you, Jamil.
Thank you so much for thank you so much for your answer, Madam Leader. And I agree that those things that you pointed out are extremely important in getting us where we need to go. Um, Pointed towards what colleague Bruce had said earlier. How can we prevent that in a capitalist society such as ours? And I'm assuming we're talking about the issue with the hotel. Colleague Bruce, do you want to expound on that?
Yes, can you hear me? Am I heard?
Yes, we can.
I have to make sure I'm being heard because things are happening with this internet service. Am I heard?
Yes, yes, you're being heard. We know how it is.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now you see, you say a capitalist. Capital cannot be unregulated. Especially in all societies like ours, we cannot just have a rampant, unregulated capitalist culture in this country where people just come in and do as they like because you have money. You just come and do as you like. There has to be regulation, and this regulation has to be prosecuted with the interest of economic actors at heart. So to say, oh, we have a capitalist economy and do anything about it, we just have to make people come and do it, and rich people will come and grab up all the opportunities. Come here from overseas, you don't know how they get the money, where they clean out the money. They come and they do this and they outspend you and all that sort of thing. No, that's not how capitalism works. Capitalism, especially in small countries like ours, needs to be regulated. And this is what we're talking about. When we speak, for instance, of the WTO, not slavish in terms of accepting any and everything the WTO comes with, we have to protect our own interests, you see? And that is what government is there for. Government, first and foremost, has to protect interests, economic interests, social interests, educational interests, etc., of their citizens. And if they are unwilling to do that, then we have to remove them and an administration that is perfectly willing to do that. Because we see the situation, the social situation which has become so in our country where people don't have employment, your businesses die, as they have told us since the pandemic started. Almost one small firms in this country have utterly collapsed, and there is no from the government to do anything to ensure they come back to life, as the case might be. And it reminds me of a time in the 90s where before Hugo, at that time, of course, I was involved in manufacturing business myself on a small, and Antigua had over 150 small manufacturing workshops in Hugo in 1989. Hurricane Hugo destroyed almost all of these businesses, their buildings, their machinery, etc. Just as Hurricane Hugo utterly destroyed the tannery, that one tannery they had in Montserrat, which never came back to life. And we have this situation, very vulnerable in small states, unprotected, to have a government which offers no protection to us, which has no program to stimulate us when we collapse and fail and fall as small businesses. This is completely unacceptable. And this is why we are here tonight advocating this new business environment, these new opportunities for business, so that we can train our people, enable them to organize into small workshops by the hundreds, employ 2 people, 5 persons, 10, 20 persons, etc., to help with their production. And this is how we are going to grow our economy. We are not, of course, but we are saying for the most part that big act as a mother plant within our economy, generating links within our economy. So we have an integrated business sector comprising businesses of all sizes working together for the common good, which is the generation of employment and wealth for the Antiguan people and for those who have come to invest in our economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, colleague Bruce. Colleague Gamil, you can feel free to in right now.
Good night, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello? Oh, okay. Just
Yes, we
making
hear you.
sure. So good night once again, everyone. I'm just gonna jump jump in and add to what colleague Bruce said. I know he said a lot, along with Madam Leader, but we also have to understand that in order for us to put some sort of regulation in place, two-tier issue that we had. And the issue is that, number one, we fail to put proper structure in place, and as colleague Bruce mentioned before, regulate our key sectors. And number two, we also have to understand that it will take some re-education our people to understand the importance of adding the necessary information out there. And unfortunately, I was having some internet issues earlier, but I wanted to ask Mr. Barreto this is because given a sector that could bring significant revenue into our industry, agriculture, renewable energies would play a huge role in improving our current stock within the agriculture sector. I know that most of these lands don't have the necessary infrastructure, and to reach them, it would take a significant cost. About to do the research, we would have known that there are other avenues in getting necessary tools to get up to date and the necessary technology. The issue is, first of all, with any key stakeholder and any potential investor, we have to have the necessary information. And sometimes we have to look at all of the different stakeholders in order for us to get to where we, whether it be from an administrative position or even from a technical position, and even the farmers on a whole. I think one of the major issues and one of the things that they is going to face in the future is that we're going to have to take the time out to really educate people and show them the importance of being a part of different associations, assisting with the next. And as Bruce mentioned before, things like the WTO, we cannot approach them unless we have the necessary information in place, so we can have a viable argument as to why we would decrease our imports when it comes to certain parts and certain sectors. I agree that we can always increase our production, and I'm not just talking agriculture, I'm talking about all sectors. But the fact remains is we're going to have to understand that it is very important, very crucial for any administration to have that political will to re-educate people and to restructure all of the different sectors within Antigua that potentially bring significant yield into our economy. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. We heard you loud and clear. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your intervention, colleague Gamil. Very poignant. It's very important to retool and re-educate and reaffirm our population in for any political party, any organization who wants to really effect change where we are. Right? And Kaiser says he's here. Good night, Kaiser. May wonder how come you're so late. You're late. But thank you for joining us anyway. And thank you to all the persons who are still on with us tonight. If you're still here, drop some orange emojis in the comments, like and share the live. Make sure we get it out to as much people as possible. Right, so thank you very, very much for the persons here. Renewable energy, Gregory says, should be one of the first investments. Most definitely. Onisha is saying, yes, that's what I'm talking about. Time to get into manufacturing. Let's go DNA. Gregory says again, I love this. Real issues. And that's what we do here. We talk about real issues. We have engaging, educational, and enlightening conversations about real issues that affect all of us here in Antigua and Barbuda. Because the good life is not just for some, the good life is for all, and prosperity is for all when it comes to the Democratic National Alliance. Thank you so much for all wonderful point, Gregory says. So thank you so much for all the comments so far. Thank you for staying with us. And if you know someone who would like to watch and they are not on Facebook and Twitter, we are also live on YouTube. You can find us at Democratic National Alliance on YouTube, or you can head over to dnaab.com/watch, and you have all the options where you can view this live. So if there's someone out there who you know would love to hear what the DNA has to say, please point them to these links, to these platforms, so that they as well can partake in this amazing session that we are having tonight. All right, so our next speaker, our next presenter, is another founding member of the DNA who believes that politics, like anything else, must give way to change. She encourages and calls on persons of like mind to seek out the DNA as a vehicle to break free from a two-party political cycle that paralyzes ideas, people, and progress. Kali Maleka.
Thank you, colleague Chenille. That little write-up is so nice. Thanks. All right. Now, I believe we have some return listeners to our public forum. And like we said, this is a platform for us to engage and consult with the public and to receive their feedback and harvest their ideas and thoughts. The last public forum, I on topic, the developmental theme of education. And we know that education is so much, it's so broad that could be said, that it was a very pre-seed presentation. Tonight, we wanted to take the opportunity to just talk a little bit on one aspect of the education redevelopment that the DNA has in mind, and that would be the TVET sector, right? Technical vocational education training. Now, we would have already discussed at the last forum, of course, that the DNA believes that we need to design a fit for purpose educational system. Ambassador would have said this evening, as he did last time, that any type of developmental thrust requires the purposeful hand of government. Government has to make a decision, the direction it wants, and it needs to create the plans, programs, policies, and legislative framework to get us there. Education is no different. But what we have seen is an education system. I know that we're linked into the CXC programmatic framework, but to what extent can we say that the current education system is responsive to our national development priorities? Let me ask, therefore, do you know what our national developmental priorities are? Let us start there. And perhaps in asking that question, we can answer it. That we have not, I don't know that any developmental priorities have been articulated as a nation. I know that our current administration and the Prime Minister in particular speaks about building an economic powerhouse. But that catchphrase in and of itself does not provide any direction. It gives us the cues as to what the priorities for development will be. Now, we can already accept that we have gotten a lot of things right in education. And just like any other, post-independence Caribbean country, we have invested heavily in human capital and through education. But are we reaping the fruits of that? Now, TVET, Technical Vocational and Educational System Training, has been properly researched, and in developing countries in particular, because there is a thrust for development, TVET is often identified as the single most strategic investment that a developing country can and should make in its educational system, particularly at a high school level, so that you are laying the framework that, right, in your education, a critical mass of people through our students who are interested in technical and vocational education and training. Now, the DNA holds the view that TVET is a nucleus. It is the seedbed of development sustainability. You would have heard Ambassador's presentation this evening. You would have heard Gamil touch on it as well. And I dare say that in order for us to have the diversified economy that we speak of, and for us to grow and expand a vibrant manufacturing base, we need to invest in technical and vocational education and training at an educational, within our education systems, meaning primary and high school level, right? So it is important that we recognize that COVID has changed the way labor is going to operate, that the education system operates. And so we have to reconceptualize what the micro and macro economic frameworks around education should look like. So one, we believe that education needs to be liberalized. And that liberalization has to give way to technical and vocational training that is responsive to the labor market. What is technical and vocational training? Of course, we know that it comprises skill development and training. I just want to make sure our listeners are on the same page with us. When we say technical and vocational education and training, we mean engineering, whether it be civil or structural. We mean environmental engineering. We mean training around energy, sustainability, and the environment. We mean information and computer training. Of course, we mean the traditional construction trades like carpentry, plumbing, and so on, electrical, cabinet making, tanning, as Ambassador would have mentioned. We can touch on sewing and clothing and textiles, as we would have mentioned as well. And of course, all of the trades that go along with the agricultural sector and the blue economy, which I know Madam Leader would speak on. So what are the issues? Since we're going to be, massaging this idea of expanding and broadening TVET, what are the issues that are the barriers right now? Number one, we have already a growing informal economy. Unfortunately, that informal economy is largely unskilled or low skilled. So as a government, we're saying that we need to continue in expanding informal economy because we understand and appreciate that the informal economy generates a lot of job opportunities and a seedbed, right, for entrepreneurial activity. But we would like that informal economy to be driven by skilled people, right? We already can accept that we have a bloated public sector. That is another issue because we have, therefore, a lot of our human resource going into our public sector. Therefore, based on the two things I mentioned, we are a country that have a good deal of underemployment. I want us to also accept that really we have what I call negative cultural attitudes towards the whole concept of TVET, right? Technical and vocational training, where culturally we think that education means academics, where culturally we think that if a child does not excel in the academic field, then, they don't, or they're not bright enough. Our has a habit of spitting them out because we are not creating the avenues and the gateways for them to, become who they are, and for the education system to develop the inherent skills and abilities that these young people have. And we have a lot of them, particularly, within our boys, right? And so the education system continues to fail them. But that is because even within our homes, we have negative cultural attitudes towards the skills trades. I want to say as well that we have severe underfunding. Our education financing models are very unidimensional. and they're all targeted towards a sort of classroom setup, right? And we know that it is very human resource heavy in terms of the wage bill, capturing a lot of that. So immediately we will have to design new financing models, right, to move the TVET sector forward. We also want to register the fact that we know that we have a very high attrition rate within the ICT, STEMs, and skill-based subjects. That is because we must accept that perhaps our ways of teaching these particular subjects, the pedagogy around them, need to be better enhanced. Having said that, I think I must also mention that attrition, meaning people falling out or they're doing poorly in their examinations, also comes from the fact that these sectors are under-resourced. So our students don't get a lot of the hands-on practical training that these types of sectors require. And so there is a type of disjointed practical application of the concept of TVET, right, within the system. Our system currently lacks the type of standardization that is required. So you may have one high school that is very big on agriculture or, you know, woodworking or the technical drawing and so on. And then we have other schools where these subjects are not sufficiently emphasized. So DNA is saying that, no, we need standardization, and we need it to not be disjointed. That the system must be fluid, dynamic, yes, but it must be responsive. So everything is feeding back into what our developmental thrust is. And of course, there is therefore the issue of our teachers and making sure that our teachers are rightly skilled, rightly trained to end the sort of TVET expansion we require. So very quickly, I can say that the DNA's concept of education is multifaceted. We are focused on diversification, and we are focused on upscaling manufacture. Therefore, the DNA would implement almost immediately a national human resource development strategy, because we believe that if our education system is not speaking to the developmental thrust that we have, we're not going to get very far. What we will continue to have is a type of brain drain that we have experienced as a nation. What we will continue to have is that we have governments come in and beat their chest, boom, 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 that, oh, we give 500, 2,000, 3,000 scholarships. And what we have essentially done, we're beginning to now engage in the trade of exporting our human, instead of making sure that we are given are being tied back to the type of economy and nation we want to cultivate. So the DNA will decide on what our developmental imperatives are. And having done that, those imperatives are able to then and therefore dictate the type of educational reform that we will have. The DNA will also therefore include TVET as a big portion of that, because I can already tell you that a DNA economy is an economy driven by skills and innovation, right? And the sort of industries that have been formerly neglected, right? Those are coming forward with us. We believe as well that there needs to be greater harmonization of the TVET education system, which currently exists. We know that we have engineering and state college, and we have ABIS, which offers another type of vocation training. There needs to be greater harmonization of those plants. And of course, I would have mentioned already that the entry point for TVET should be early. So already, the same way children are writing their common entrance exams, or well, we don't have common entrance exams anymore, but they are matriculating into secondary schooling. During that process, our system is supposed to be able to identify skills, right? And what the inherent talents in our young people are, and begin to put them on a certain path. the last two things I wish to say is, we also believe and accept that for a robust TVET system to unfold, the business sector must be a firm part of that thrust. TVET market, but also we appreciate that if we have a TVET sector that is sufficiently resourced, meaning we have cutting edge and state-of-the-art machinery, equipment, computerization, and so on, that we will have to have the sort of partnership with the private sector, okay, where they are investing in the development of that sector, because they appreciate that the human resource coming out of it, right, is who they will need to grow and expand their very businesses. So it is a natural fit. And in countries where TVET works, the private sector is always a key part of that, because we want the labor market to also direct what areas we're focusing on within the TVET education system. What I would say lastly is DNA government on the issue of TVET leaves that similarly and equally that our students that go through a TVET system ought to be properly certified. And so any program that we would undertake would have certification as a part of it. And of course, that would mean that there has to be a level of, accreditation from regional institutions, or at least that the curriculum is responsive enough and solid enough that we are setting up our students to be able to easily transition to tertiary education, right, when they leave us. Okay, so I think I will leave that there enough. I want to believe that I hopefully would have stimulated some thought within our listeners, and I stand ready to receive their feedback on this, Madam Moderator.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Malika. That was definitely an enlightening and educational presentation, as were the ones before, because that's what we're all about here. Issues and educating you on the issues. And as someone who is, self-employed and employed in a very a non-traditional sector, I definitely would like to associate myself with all that you have said, because it's extremely important that we invest in our children's skills and capabilities from a very young age to foster that type of mindset that is going to lead national development, not just their personal development, but national development overall. So starting from there is extremely important. And I think, the audience agrees, because we've Gregory here saying we send our children to school to become servants, which is not acceptable. We need to invest more into our children and encourage entrepreneurs. Small business is a must. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's the entrepreneurs, the people with that sort of mindset, who will take what some see as a negative situation and turn it into something positive, because you have that sort of thought process, you have that sort of energy going on, and you've taken that and used it to make something amazing. So imagine if this were how the majority of persons thought. Imagine where we would be as a nation if that were the case. And I think that that is why our educational policy, our educational platform is so important, starting from K through 12, to really make sure that our children, who we say are the leaders of tomorrow, are properly educated and given that foundation that they need to move forward. Stalisha Harris says, on point, Miss Parker, most definitely. Gregory says again, tell them, my friend, education doesn't mean academic. That's so right, with a negative attitude towards technical subject area. Marie asks, what's going on with our youth skills? Why is it so stigmatized? The education there is so vital for life. That is definitely true. I know they were having some classes quite recently that were very well supported, and I loved to see it. Manifa says, I love this. Thank you very much, Manifa. Jamal says, Let me click a click. Jamal says, spot on. That's why consideration should be given to establishing an apprenticeship program to apply and further develop
Correct.
and encourage vocational skills. Most
Correct.
definitely. And these are things that we do talk about in the Vision 2040 for the Democratic National Alliance. And if that's something you're interested in reading, you can see all of our policy and platforms at dnaab.com/issues. So from education to the economy to entrepreneurship, anything you can possibly think of, it's right there. I think Gregory's responding to Marie here. Say people have stigmatized it, giving the impression it's for school dropouts. And yeah, I can tell you that in my day, most definitely, it was something that persons, turned their nose up at. But having a skill is so important. Not just having the skill, but developing that skill and learning to use that skill for your own personal development. Onisha says, and she's replying to Marie as well, unfortunately, when it was first set up, it was known for school dropouts. But it has improved over the years, and I see people are embracing it now. True, not only as a school, but as a technical evening class that adults take, which is true. I think they did some cake making, cake decorating, fashion design, makeup, welding, and some other really amazing stuff is going on over there. We have from Jamal here, dovetailing vocational skills with IT literacy. Most definitely. Most definitely, Jamal. Onisha says again, thank you, Malika. Excellent. Minister of Education in waiting. Yes, speak it into the universe. Speak it into the universe. You know how we do it. Ewart, who's watching on YouTube, says, excellent presentation. You have certainly stimulated some thoughts in my mind. It's all about nation building, and we need skilled people. Very much so. Cody says, Malika, you're a gem. Excellent presentation. We have a sort of longish comment here, but it is definitely worth the read. Happy to hear the presentation from Malika Parker. Finally, over the years, I've worked with my children to develop them for a future economy and not just doing subjects just because. I would hope that there will be a proper guidance counselor program in the schools, which will be able to guide our children on the subject areas that they should concentrate on in order to meet their career goals, instead of the haphazard system that is currently in place and that has been in place for years. Andre, you are right on the money with that one. I have a comment here from Tyreek. He says, what really needs to change is the way in which some teachers interact with their students and the way schools deal with academic performance, which is 100% true. I remember going to school with some persons who didn't necessarily perform well academically, but they could draw you with their eyes closed. They could fix absolutely anything, and they had these amazing skills and could work with their hands, but those things weren't really pushed in. As a creative, people love to tell you, oh, what you gonna do with daddy? COVID has taught us that there's a lot that you can do with that. There is most definitely a lot to do with that. And Madam Leader, you can take the mic.
Um, Madam Moderator, you are so right with that. And again, I just want to underscore the point I made earlier, that this new economy and society is going to take a concerted effort on all of our parts to rid ourselves from these prejudices that have forestalled our development as a people and as a nation. I believe somebody just said that we're going to need skilled people for the new Antigua and Barbuda. And all of us had better believe it. But as Malika said, and I want to underscore that as well, that in the design of this new economy, the DNA matches the skills that are required to what it is that we foresee and we want to take the country over the long term, certainly implemented in short term spans. And this is why we speak about our Vision 2040. Because in a restructured educational system, the educational system has to meet the requirements and the demands of the developmental agenda, so that we're not just, teaching children by rote. We're not going to classify them into academics and non-academics as though there's something wrong if you choose not to go along a traditional quote unquote academic stream. I know I've lived in developed countries, and the people who really make plenty money are the people who work with their hands, the technical persons. Because you look around your home, start there. The chairs that we sit on, the lamps that we use, the pots and the pans and the crockery and so on. You think is somebody who had 10 subjects with, that we tend to celebrate. It is somebody, some joiner, some person who has an artistic mind, who's able to put his or her skills and talents together to produce a fantastic end product. And where would we be as a society without beds and tables and chairs, without joiners and carpenters, without persons who are involved in pottery and these kinds of things? And so I am just urging all of us on this live to prepare yourselves for this new economy which the DNA envisions and which has come largely from consultations with you, because we all recognize that we cannot continue along this same old path, because the world is getting away from us. COVID has taught us that we have got to re-engineer and redesign our society and our economy. And in that redesign, skills and skill sets are going to be required. I personally believe, I think most of you know that I am a child of teachers. And I personally believe, because my parents believed in it, that every child must, whether in the form of apprenticeship program, be exposed to sets. Learn how to do something. You have hands, and your hands can be directed, working in tandem with your brain, to create something. It is going to be absolutely necessary. We're not going to get away from our tourism product very easily. And we shouldn't. We should just seek to be diversifying our economy. But even when you think about, say, a new plant, not a traditional hotel, maybe something that is promoting a green hotel plant, how are we going to integrate the resources from the blue economy to promote such a concept within the tourism sector? And who will be the artisans who are going to be required to use the conch shells, to use the shells, to use different resources that we take for granted now. So I just want to say, Malik, it was an excellent presentation. You really did justice to this topic, and that privately I'd been rooting for us to cover this in a very comprehensive way. And I think you did our audience and our followers proud. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Most definitely, and I 100% agree with you. Adrian Daniel here is saying we need to train persons to own their businesses rather than serving others and losing their jobs and security in a pandemic or a crisis. Most definitely, developing your skills is right now more than ever extremely important. Well, that means it's just taking a while to load. Tyreek says, that's so true. This country has been brought to its knees because of the way the government is operating. Operating or not operating? Kimberly says, we need to move towards finding and developing individuals' natural gifts. Our educational policy must foster the cultivation of human purpose and innate ability, a system that helps them to find themselves and their purpose in the nation and in the world. Most definitely. Monifa is saying, I am 35, a year away from a PhD degree, and I just enrolled into a Mason class at Abyss. Who wants to join me? I'm gonna message you because that actually sounds pretty fun. I was saying the other day, I need a bookshelf, so why not make my own bookshelf? Let's see how this turns out. Right, it's better. Tyreek says it's better to have some that can do the job than educated fools who don't know what they're really doing. Most definitely. So Andre wants us to post the links for YouTube. So Andre, what you can do is you can visit us online at dnaab.com/watch, and all of the links are there, and we will post it in the comments for you as well. Hammer Films Antigua says the world is getting away from us and we must re-engineer and redesign our economy. Well said, most definitely. And it looks like we have another person joining our Mason class. Adrian says, I will need to be able to do some repairs on my home. Most definitely. So we will tell you guys how our Mason class goes. Who pong their finger from who to pong their finger, and whose bookshelf stays up. Right? So once again, colleague Malika, excellent presentation, very educational, no pun intended. And our audience agrees with me, and I know that because in the next few seconds they're going to be dropping some applause, some little clappy hands in the comments. Because we're virtual, we can't give you a rousing round of applause that you very much deserve. So if you agree with me that that was an excellent presentation, drop some applause in the comments. Remember to like and share the live as well. So remember to like and share the live as long as you're here. Thank you for sticking with us. And we are going to be going into our next presenter. So our next presenter, the gentleman who we heard from briefly earlier, is actually the team leader in St. Paul, Gamil Joyce. He hails from the community of Falmouth, and he has a passion for unleashing the potential of the agricultural sector. Joyce is a young businessman and a former banker. So without further ado, Gamil, over to you, colleague.
Good night, everyone. Well, my colleagues have said such a mouthful that I'm already ready to put my back because, trust me, I think tonight has been very informative. But just to add to what has been discussed so far tonight, one of the key aspects of DNA and our mission, as we have mentioned before, and we will continue to mention it over and over again, is the diversification of everything, not just the economy from a fiscal standpoint, but from a national standpoint. And energizing every part in every sector and creating a strong machine that can create a strong economy and country. One of my main goals is to make sure that, as colleague Malika mentioned before, is to re-educate people and let all understand that, listen, if you look at the strongest economies and their sectors, their history, you would find that number one, a lot of these economies were made robust through small and medium-sized businesses. And number two, technical aspect of it was also very strong and robust. And if we look into the history of our Twin Island state throughout the past few decades, we have lost that model of creating a strong and robust economy, aka country. And one of the things that I like to speak about is agriculture. And what I'm going to talk about tonight and do is to educate everyone, show how we can synergize all the different topics that we have already discussed. I'm going to work my way backwards and start with mostly from an educational process. The history of Antigua and Barbuda, I remember in the past, I would say the past 3-4 decades, we have somewhat strayed away from the whole agriculture model and also technical model overall. Within the schools, you find that there's some schools that don't teach agriculture. They would consider themselves as high-end facilities, and where the main focus was to educate people and let them understand the importance of agriculture and technical training overall. we realized that our educational system somewhat lost focus and failed to understand that, as colleague Malika and Madam Leader has mentioned before, the fact that people are blessed with different skills. For me, I want us to understand that industries like agriculture at this point in time, and I would like all of you to do on Antigua, you'd find that a lot of the major farmers and farm producers, they have a background, especially from our Guyanese counterparts. A lot of them have come here and have made a great living in agriculture and selling agricultural byproducts, also hucksters and all these things, and they're able to build their homes, whether it be here or back home, and make a strong and living off. And so this is very important in educating our people as countries in the region. And yes, I like Antigua a lot, because for a small nation, not a lot of natural resources and resource, but we're still very small. We have done comparatively well to our bigger counterparts. But I would like us the fact that you have places like Jamaica and Trinidad and Guyana, who has focused a lot on technical training and are able to export their human resources into different countries, including Antigua, and their individual, their citizens have been able to come here, a great life, and create great opportunities for themselves that Antigua also could have created for themselves. So we have to start off on the base of educating our people from primary school level, helping them to understand the importance of entrepreneurship, of things like agriculture, and showing them the different opportunities within the agriculture sector. And we have to understand, when it comes to growing technology, agriculture is no longer the same way in which you just use a fork and maybe even a donkey to clear your land. There are so many different opportunities. You can be a chemist, you can be an accountant, you can be an agronomist, you can even be a real business manager, because a lot of these farmers, they need individuals to manage their business properly. But in order for us to do that, we have take the time out to restructure our educational system, and also find ways and means of showing their different avenues within different sectors in creating jobs and also businesses. So one of the key things that we have to focus on is education, as colleague Malika mentioned before. I'm into too in depth, because the fact remains that she has already given a mouthful, just regurgitated that she has already said. But it's about time that we focus on resetting the minds of everyone else. Now, in order for us to do this, as we start to grow our different sectors, we have to also understand that, as mentioned in our previous forum, it's important that we collect the necessary data. That's one. And so in different data collection agencies, scientists, and so on and so forth, to put the necessary information out there to get us to that level. Second of all, we have to understand that as a growing country, and I would consider some sectors as still being in the baby stage, any responsible administration will have to take up the responsibility of putting the structures in place to regulate and administer and also implement any necessary strategy to grow any necessary sector within Antigua and Barbuda. And once again, back to the agriculture sector, one of the major issues that we have is that there's no, we have no clue how many farmers in Antigua. And I know there are many technicians that are working on a registration process, but at this point in time, it's not just about finding out who's farming, but you also have to find out what they plan to farm. Is it viable in that area? And these kind of things. When you get to that point now, this is where it's important to create different associations. And strange enough, and is one of those islands that still up to this day do not have functioning farmers co-op. Any responsible administrators again would make put in place in order to regulate agriculture overall, because agriculture is not just about farming. Before different aspects that would also go into tourism, would go into science and all these different and technology. So we have to make sure that we put the necessary mechanisms in place that maintain and control all aspects of agriculture. And I will go this far to say that, listen, it's not about the politicians or the minister control any sector, because once you're in place, that machinery would control itself and run without any kind of major hiccups. The main for any responsible administration, and I believe that the DNA will be one of our focus, is to make sure that we put the necessary mechanisms to form proper controls and also proper implementation processes, that all of our different sectors can find ways of generating revenue and all maintaining themselves. So added to that, we have to make sure that the Ministry of Lands have the necessary data where you work along with private stakeholders. You have to make sure that the hotel and hospitality industry work along with the Ministry of Agriculture. There are many moving wheels in this process. And until we understand that, listen, this is not just one ministry, this is each endeavoring and all in one goal as our national anthem. We will continue to face the same issues that we have faced in the past. And I must say that as an organization, the DNA does plan to put these things in place, that we can create a viable industry that would be cohesive to all the main industries within a strong and robust economy. Now, to finish up, one of the major things that we looked at in the past, and I know a lot of individuals love to speak about this, is financing. We'd have to understand that a small country like Antigua and Barbuda, once we are innovative enough, financing should not be an issue. The fact is that we have the potential in leading not just the Caribbean, but the world as a small island, perfect topography, just enough resources, we can continue to grow our human resources locally and also internationally, because we have Antiguans in the diaspora and in other countries. We can take time out to create a proper strategic plan that will cover over time, and we could apply for different grants and to different funding agencies all over the world, so we can achieve our goal. So, like for instance, we have an issue where everything stands still, and we're looking for different ways of getting revenue in our economy. COVID has that opportunity where we can take the time out to re-educate people, put structures in place, and also help to create that organism that we could cohese everyone together. And when I say that, I'm talking about from the farmer himself to the supermarket owner, to the hotelier, right down to the professional lawyer or accountant. Because we play a role in building these different sectors. And it's not just agriculture alone. As Barreto mentioned, same thing when it comes to renewable energy sector, where you have individuals that can be trained. Of course, you put the necessary mechanisms in place, where you have a co-op for individuals who installation or maintenance. So we can regulate different sectors, and everybody would win regulated. And it's not about policing one, or about making sure that everyone can get a equal or somewhat equal piece of the pie when it comes to creating jobs. But if we have looked at major countries like the United States, like England and all of these other countries, their economy grew significantly when they focused on not just one particular part of their market, but also creating an avenue where you have enough small entrepreneurs picking up or filling up a significant void within their revenue collection, and thus creating a part of the economy. And once we find that model that we can do this, tourism will at some point in time become somewhat irrelevant. I would not say that would disappear, because it does play an integral part in who we are. But at the same time, if we start to focus on different avenues within Antigua and Barbuda, we'll see a significant benefit without even worrying about foreign direct investments, such as we do at this point in time. I do hope that as the DN continue to speak about diversification of the economy, you don't just think about business on a whole, but also the mindset, education, manufacturing, everything. And once we can do that and find a way to think together, I think that we can become, quote unquote, as they like to mention, a true economic powerhouse within. So if anyone have any questions or comments, especially towards the technical aspect or from an agricultural perspective, you can freely ask.
Thank you so much, colleague Gamil. Another very educational and enlightening presentation from you. And the comments are going a little crazy here, so we're just gonna catch up a little bit. So this is from the previous conversation we're having, but I think it's still, it is still very relevant here. It's a bit long to put up on the screen. Vincent Parker says, very great presentation on vocational education and training, Malika. Our leaders still don't understand the importance of this aspect of our skills development to the importance of the development of this country. That's why our tradesmen are not qualified in vocational education and training. Our leaders are afraid of diversification and are holding our people to ransom, trying to hold on to a dying economy. I hope the people in education who are concerned with vocational education and training are listening and understanding your discourse. Vocational education and training is the future of diversification. And Arlene said, "Good evening. I just joined. What did I miss?" Arlene, you missed plenty. So make sure you catch the replay after the live video has ended. It will be available right on the page for replay. So you can get yourself acquainted with what you missed tonight if you are just joining us. Scroll down to these new messages here. And Adrian Daniel says here again, we need to be able to feed ourselves. Legislation should be made to urge supermarkets to purchase a large percentage of local produce. That entails meat and poultry production, eggs and vegetable productions. Dunbar should be reopened to produce preserves, ketchup, hot sauce, pickles, sauce, etc. Go ahead, Gamil.
Correct. Correct. I just wanted to say correct to that comment in particular.
Yes, yeah.
No problem.
If I can, well, I was going to reply to that comment also. If you could give me 1 sec, colleague Malika. I agree with Miss Danielle. The issue is, once again, and as I mentioned, it's about the necessary structure put in place in order for these things to happen. It's all well and good that we speak about creating that avenue for supermarkets and hotels to purchase locally, but it's going to take a collaborative effort between all private stakeholders. And what do I mean by that? At this point in time, there's no proper way in collecting data from our farmers locally. And one of the issues that we have is because legislation, as you mentioned before, no proper legislation, there's no way of actually pushing to get this information. So you can have, if you look at our agriculture sector, there are times where we have gluts when you can't find anything on the market, and that's because they're planting the same thing at the same time. And this segues into a lot of the major issues. Not only is it not regulated, but we also have to look at season. We have to look at resources that the other farmers will have access to. So, like for instance, during the summer when it's extra hot, you find that most farmers grow vision or low crops because we already have a water issue. If an industry that listen, water is always an issue. And anyone thinking in the future would say greenhouse, it's been here for decades. We've taken the time out to re-educate farmers and let them know that, listen, we are on board with you, willing to invest just to jumpstart the sector. And we'll be investing in different technologies such as greenhouses, hydroponic system, aquaponic system, and so on and so forth. The only way you'll find any administration or any ministry invested in the farmers like that is if, and anybody overall, is return in their investments. And that's just how business is. It doesn't make any sense you invest in something and you're not sure how you're going to get a return. So until you put that regulation in place where you say, listen, we're going to lease you 5 acres of land. These are crops that are best suited for the area of the island that we're planting. And we guarantee you the market for, let's just say, 2 to 3 acres out of your 5 acres of this particular crop. We will continue to have that issue of importation of goods because there's no data. And the argument that a lot of hoteliers and supermarket owners use, which is a very valid argument, is that, listen, the market here is very inconsistent. So one time you can pumpkin that you can stone dog with, and the other times when you can't pumpkin at all. And so if they want to be able to keep up and maintain a proper service with their customers, the farmers overall will also have to make sure that they can keep with their customer, which is the hotelier or the supermarket. The only way we can get all of this to work properly is if we put the proper, so regulate the sector in a way that everybody can benefit from it. And that's what I meant when I made my statement.
Excellent. Thank you for that response. Can you repeat that for me? You broke up just a little bit there. Can you repeat that for us? Seems like our good colleague here is having a little bit of a technical difficulty, but I definitely agree. And in the first few weeks of, first few months, I should say of, the lockdowns that we had here, there was a significant glut. And one of the things that would have been extremely helpful is that if we knew who had what, and we could get them on from the farm straight to the table. But in the absence of that data, that very important data, there's very little that could have been done. So I'm going to hand over to Madam Leader.
Thank you so much, Chanel, Madam Moderator, and Emil for the presentation. I just would want to comment a bit here and to say that our viewers should understand that the DNA is fully committed to supporting a restructured, modernized agricultural sector in which research and development will be a key component. Agriculture, in order to be viable and sustainable, has to be planned, just like any other sector of an economy. It has to be planned. We also have to recognize that we are fully committed to ensuring for the people of Antigua and Barbuda food and nutrition security 365 days of the year ad infinitum. How do we get there? It requires a government that is fully committed, as I said, to the sector and the sector stakeholders. That is one. It also requires government's commitment to working collaboratively and strategically with the private sector, meaning the stakeholders of agriculture, the farmers, the fishers, the agro-processors, etc., etc. And this is also going to require government urging of the stakeholders to form cooperatives. There is nothing wrong per se with the concept of a glut. What has to happen is that we don't have a wastage when there is a glut, which is really overproduction of any one or several crops. This is where, in the DNA's view for the restructured economy, manufacturing plays a key role. I believe earlier, Adrian did speak about Donbass. So what we're going to have to also do is to modernize and upgrade the facilities at Donbass, where testing of the value-added produce, be it ketchup, tomato paste, be it pulp, for mangoes. We always have a mango glut. We have mangoes, we say here, can stone dog, right? What do we do with this excess production? We need to convert it into a value-added product so that manufacturers and agro-processors, who are also key stakeholders in economic activity, will have the resources that they need to turn their investments into not only productivity but profitability. We also have to recognize that government has a key role to play in the modernization of production and production methods. So we may very well see a situation, and we ought to be encouraging our farmers to move towards that, where we are using integrated greenhouse technology for growing crops. We also have to, and Bruce likes to say this all the time, we have to better utilize and massage our foreign affairs so that, I say this all the time, we're not using our diplomacy to go back to computer, to laptop, to tablets and so on. We need to recognize, with a restructured economy, this is where our relations, our foreign relations, will play a key role, because we will be discussing and negotiating with countries which have more advanced technologies in various sectors from which we could benefit. We have to look at, Gamil spoke about it, in the school system, not only directing our students as to what areas would be good for career options, but whether it is a summer program, whether it is right after they graduate and they may be looking to further their education, as well as for existing stakeholders to negotiate more opportunities for short-term courses, short to medium-term courses, where these stakeholders can be exposed to what is happening in other markets, in other jurisdictions. And with that exposure, government must, at the same time, be working to ensure that there are systems in place where when these farmers come back, they are able to ply their trade, they're able to diversify their own production to ensure the viability of their investments. And so if we when we get this right under a DNA administration, not only will we have the sustainability of the supply, which is what hotels and restaurants complain about all the time. And these are, I don't want to call them loopholes because they're really not loopholes. They are poorly planned production methods and methodologies, right? But when we have that consistency of supply, we could be looking at a situation where we are able to export some of our production, our produce, I'm sorry, and our products, our agri-processed products to some of the nearby territories. Let us start there. Everybody wants a big market. Yes, we should think big, but the rules of trade are such that sometimes as soon as we meet whatever standards they set, the standards change again. And so let us start by using our neighbors. Let us ship there. And we also have to get into agriculture that says we will urge farmers to get into niche products so that everybody, as Gamil said, is not producing tomatoes, right? But encourage hotels and restaurants to plan their menus around what is locally available in the marketplace. So I want to just assure the public, assure our followers and our listeners that we have thought this thing out. We're not necessarily the architects of every new policy in terms of perspective, but we look at what works in different places. We certainly know what does not work here. We know what the deficiencies are here, but we are so serious about the redevelopment of our economy and our society that we plan, we meet with public sector officials, we both present and past. We work with private sector persons. We work with technicians within the region in order to plan what we have unveiled for the people of Antigua and Barbuda, which is so wonderfully laid out in our Vision 2040. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much, Madam Leader, for that intervention. And speaking about wonderfully laid out, I'm just going to take this opportunity to invite our viewers and those who view this afterwards to check out the first issue of our newsletter, The Catalyst, which was launched today. So from poetry to policies to politics, we're taking you through a visual and literary adventure experience, if you want to say that. We have articles from the leadership of the party, from young people, from almost any sector you could think of. So this is our first issue. Inviting you to check it out. You can find it on our website, dnaap.com/the catalyst. We'll drop the link in the comment section down below so we can all check it out, have a read, subscribe to the newsletter as well. So when it comes out, you can get it straight in your inbox. Some of the things we are talking about tonight, you can also find in the newsletter we have from the doctor's desk, as well as the policy corner, which explains some of the DNA policy. Some of them we touched on tonight, some of them you will see in there as well. So take this opportunity to invite you to check that out. And before I come to you, colleague Bruce is going to go through 2 comments or so. Andrea says we should have a national database of farmers. Farmers need to be registered to buy certain chemicals. Proper record keeping will kickstart that. Farmers themselves need to lobby for this registration process to ensure that their produce have a market. Plant on rotation according to location. Andre says, I would hope the research and development would be available for all to access the details of the research. Too many times the information is gathered and is only available for a chosen few. Andre, you're 100% correct in that. Too many times that happens. And, in the DNA, we are all about data, information, and interacting with the public and making sure that prosperity for all happens, but it has to come from interventions from all as well. We can't serve you if we don't know what you're thinking and what you want us to do for you. Gava St. John says, from the opening speaker Stanley and to all the other speakers, dynamic presentations, great topics. What an awesome night. Thank you so much, Gava. Yeah, Andre again saying agriculture is a strong industry for Antigua and Barbuda to capitalize on. However, it has been treated as the red-headed stepchild. We need to change. Entrepreneurs need to support financial, technical, and all other support. Training programs to ensure a vibrant success rate. All right, and Ruth Lynn says we have a lot of agriculture comments coming in. Production and export is the way to go for the livelihood of Antigua and Barbuda. Very proud of the presenter this evening. Love your passion for the future of Antigua and Barbuda. DNA is heading in the right direction. Thank you so much, Ruth Lynn. And with that said, colleague Bruce.
Okay, here am I on once more. And after Gamil, I felt compelled to just make a small comment on area of previous administration's country to do the excellent program that could have been done when and subsequent to our acquiring all pretty much, well, our government acquiring on behalf of people, pretty much all of the agricultural land in the country in 1967, I think it was, right? Because we had, on that occasion, we had a golden opportunity. Had we a government that was policy driven, that understood really the role that could be played by agriculture in our economy and our development, had we had such a government, I can imagine right now where we would have been today. Because what happened then is that Antigua became, well, one of the few countries. In fact, there are only two countries in the country that ever had the opportunity to take possession of all the lands that the colonial overlords had acquired for themselves. And those two countries are, of course, Cuba and Antigua. Cuba acquired their lands by violence, by revolution, and it was because of the nature of the acquisition of that land that sanctions were them from which they haven't recovered up to today. We, on the other hand, purchased the lands with the people's money. It is the hardened people of Antigua and Barbuda with their income taxes for the 33,000 acres of excellent agricultural lands that were purchased from the syndicated administration in 1967. Now, where are we today with the complaint constantly heard that, oh, we don't have enough land to do this, oh, where are we going to find land to do that, as the case might be? What has become of the thirds of most arable land that our parents paid for with their income taxes? Most of those lands have been alienated from our own in one way or the other. So whereas at that time, consider the picture at that time, because in 1967 our population was just about 60,000, if so much. And that means we had a community of maybe 15,000 families. Our population would 15,000 families. So we had a small community of 15,000 families, some of the best and most fertile agricultural land in the Eastern Caribbean. Had we an administration that could have developed the correct policies for land use and for agricultural development basis of that 33,000 acres of land, and given, of course, that at the time, Antigua was ruled by a set of individuals and families who were some of the best experts in agricultural practice, because that is all we had been in for such a long time. We were fresh out of massive agriculture at that time. So we had the skills, and of course we would have had the interest to develop those 33,000 acres of land into one massive garden for this country. But then today, where are the orange orchards that we should have planted? Where are the avocado orchards, the mango orchards? Where is the production of yams, and so that we do so well in, and so forth? That 33,000 acres of land to a massive program of agricultural development based on the efforts of Antiguans and Barbudans, whether in terms of small farms, in terms of cooperatives, and also in terms of a few large farms owned and operated by the government. And I say that to say that we have had so many missed opportunities to create a golden age for us and for in this country, that if we do not find a way to empower in this country the people and the collective that has the will and the interest and the knowledge to really transform this country into what we want it to be, then I think we can pretty much say goodbye to Antigua as our own country, as our own nation, as our own lands. I mean, I hear them all the time on radio, leader, and the excuses always be, oh, but you bought their land. They bought the land from Stanford. But where did Stanford get that land? Stanford bought that land from Dato Tan, the Malaysian fraudster who came here and acquired nearly 2,000 acres of land from the Lester Bird administration for $1 million. He was supposed to have paid $15 million for it. He paid $1 million and inveigled the Lester Bird administration to give him full title to the nearly 2,000 acres of land for $1 million. And then he never paid the rest of the money, having secured the deed. He had become having paid just $1 million. And you're going to tell me now that Yida has come and Yida has bought that same land that we alienated for $1 million for, well, $100 million paid for it. But the fact is, why should that land, having Datatan having paid only $1 million for that, why should any subsequent administration have allowed that land to continue down the road as private ownership when only $1 million was paid for it? And when Stanford would have paid over $100 million for it, and then Datatan would have paid over $100 million for it, etc. We sold that land for $1 million. So where's our leadership in this country? Where's our government? And that should be a cautionary tale to us all that, look, if we do a thing together and if we don't remove dunce elements from the administration of our country, all of us are going to be buried under the Caribbean Sea sooner or later. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much, colleague. And the night is winding down, and we're very happy to still be here. Very happy to still have you all with us online tonight. We're extremely happy that you've decided to join us and be in our company for our second virtual public forum. If you're still here, like, comment, share the live. Thank you so much for being here. Share it to the person who you know would love to see it, and let them watch the replay. Adrian says Antigua has virtually no prime agricultural lands for local farmers. We have sold them out to greedy, selfish investors who are not interested in us as citizens. Quite precisely what Ambassador just went into. So thank you so much for that comment, Adrian. And you know, the moment that a lot of us have been waiting for, our final panelist this evening really doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. Joanne Masai is the political leader of the DNA. She's an attorney at law, former parliamentarian, and an advocate and champion of women's and children's issues. She's committed to the professional and educational development of young people and the empowerment of every citizen and resident of Antigua and Barbuda and the wider Caribbean. She exemplifies our party's motto of prosperity for all. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the political leader of the DNA, Joanne Messiah. Drop your orange emojis in the comments to welcome Madam Leader back to the mic.
Thank you so much, colleague Chanel, Madam Moderator, and thank you to the followers who are still with us. I am very mindful that you've been with us for about almost 2.5 hours, and so I think I will truncate up my presentation, but still try to get the salient points out. I will be addressing the issue of the blue economy, which was what I intended to address in the first forum, but there were so many subjects that we were tackling, and I opted not to do a disservice to you or to the presentation. So we're speaking about the blue economy, and I know you've heard about the blue economy. You've heard the government talk about it, and some of you are saying, well, what is it? Why is it important to Antigua and Barbuda? How can people benefit, and who can get involved? Because they really haven't told us. They've just said, oh, we're appointing this minister as minister in charge of the blue economy, and we're not hearing anything much more about that. I want to help you to understand what the blue economy is. And of course, the blue economy would necessarily involve fisheries and marine resources. But in a nutshell, the blue economy refers to the efficient management of our ocean resources, which is sustainable, which is healthy, and continues to benefit people and it is essentially a dynamic, integrated series of interconnected activities which refer and relate to the sustainable use of ocean resources, which for which improved livelihoods, economic growth, ocean system health, and job opportunities all come together in a way that is healthy and benefits the people of not only a country, but the world. And so what are some of these interconnected activities to which the blue economy refers? It refers to fisheries, maritime transport. It refers to waste management, to tourism, certainly to climate change. And there are, when we're talking about managing ecosystem health, ocean health, to ensure the sustainability of marine resources, all these activities come into play. We're talking about, I didn't think I mentioned renewable energy as a part of those activities, but fisheries contribute more than $270 billion annually to global GDP. And the sustainable management of our fisheries resources will result in improved livelihood for the people who make their living, sustain their families, enjoy their economic innings from this trade. It will result in the restoration of fish stocks, ocean health, and increased fish catch. When we talk about maritime transportation, we all know that and trade in goods internationally are moved by the maritime transportation system, containerization, and so on. And 80% of goods are transported in and out of countries using maritime transportation. We would have heard several years ago of this massive expansion of the Panama Canal. We know here we are, and in other developing countries, we are expanding port facilities. And the global projections say that the volume of seaborne trade is projected to double by the year 2030 and quadruple by the year 2015. That's a whole lot of movement of goods and services between and among countries. Let us look at the waste management. And the majority of ocean pollution comes from our failure to manage our waste on land. And so it just washes into the ocean and creates a whole range of issues. It kills a lot of sea life. It's bad for reefs. It is just a bad thing for our oceans. Let's look at tourism with our cruise tourism sector, which does contribute to jobs and economic growth and development of ancillary services and products onshore for our people and for many of us in small island developing states. But that too has its challenges insofar as the sustainable management of ocean resources are concerned. Let us jump to climate change. And when we examine climate change, and those of us who have been following developments in this arena, we recognize that the science has long been in concerning the impacts of climate change on our oceans and ocean resources. We're speaking to issues such as rising sea levels, ever-changing ocean current patterns, acidification, coastal erosion, things which impact particularly small island developing states in a very profound way. And the combination of these challenges signals what we in the DNA say is a clarion call for increased action, particularly the move towards sustainability. Now, in terms of the principles governing and driving the blue economy, we say that it is a symbiotic relationship with the ecosystem. And in order to manage it sustainably, and we started our presentation tonight with the whole topic and discussion about sustainable energy and so on. So we're looking here at the merging of innovation, sound and sustainable environmental best practices, competitive services and products, which are all, when working together, are responsive to the needs of our communities. I want to just bring it a little closer to home and to say to us, many of us may appreciate and some of us don't know that Antigua and Barbuda has a 200-mile radius, which is referred to as our exclusive economic zone, the EEZ, and country enjoys that. And it is widely known that and accepted that the ocean is one of the biggest new frontiers, new in the sense that the opportunities for countries and persons to benefit in a phenomenal way from the sustainable management of ocean resources is there, but it has to be managed by government and businesses and people working in tandem. Now, within our 200-mile exclusive economic zone, the EEZ, we have resources that are untapped. Let us just look for a moment at fisheries and the way we practice fishing here in Antigua and Barbuda. The majority of our fishers, men and women, they practice what is known and engage in what is known as artisanal fisheries, near-shore fisheries. So this is where we have our plate-sized snappers, our chubs, our Dr. fish, our hine, and so on. But within that 200-mile radius, we have larger pelagics, which are primarily used in a lot of our hotels and restaurants, and which are ripe for harvesting and, more importantly, export. But we have not been doing that. Why haven't we been doing that? I spent some years in the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries and was able to learn more and understand firsthand from not only fishers, but especially technicians about some of the challenges which we face in the fishery sector. Now, you look at some of our other sister islands in the OECS. You look at specifically St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada, those readily come to hand, and St. Lucia, I should add, where their fisheries is well blended. They do artisanal fisheries, but they also do fisheries which involve larger pelagics. Why are they able to do that? And you have a number of people in those countries who are able to eke out an independent living and do well just from the fishery sector. What are they doing differently? What they're doing differently is that they've had governments who recognize the tremendous economic benefits to be derived from these vast ocean resources within their EEZs. And so they invest in a lot of training, they invest in a lot of land-based facilities to accommodate and facilitate the fishery sector. They invest in assisting fisheries cooperatives to acquire larger vessels that can go far out into the ocean, harvest these large pelagics, the mai-mais, and other large catch, grouper and barracuda, and these kinds of fish stocks. And they're able to bring it back to shore where, as I said, the facilities are there to accommodate proper processing of these fish stocks, right? Now, here in Antigua and Barbuda, there was a move afoot to do that. So we have, I believe, 5 land-based fisheries sites, all sponsored by way of our bilateral arrangements with the Japanese. The question is, are we maximizing the use of those facilities? And the answer is no. We have not seen successive governments invest in fisheries vessels to assist our fisher folk to learn new fisheries techniques, fishing techniques, to enable them to go further out to sea within our EEZ and harvest what is there, right? What we have heard over the years is that some of our other sister islands, notably the French dependent territories, they have fishers with large vessels and they come into our waters and they illegally harvest our stocks. And then we have, the back and forth and so on. But I'm saying to you that that the DNA government, we are giving our full commitment to you and to say that we are not only committed to the principles of sustainability, all of our policies and our program designs are predicated on this principle within the framework of diversification. And I just want to say here, when we speak about diversification and our commitment to sustainability, we're talking about from housing to health, from social transformation to rural development, from agriculture and fisheries to environment, from sports and recreation to youth development, from tourism to foreign policy, from human resource development to culture and heritage, from justice and national security to governance and administration, from energy to transportation, from housing and urban development to diaspora involvement in the new economy and society. I want to say to you that in our management of the blue economy, our passion and our passion for an ongoing commitment to policy development of the blue economy, like our approach to governance, is guided by inclusivity, sound science, adaptive, precautionary, and informed measures, transparent and accountable governance, holistic, long-term integrated systems, which include forward and backward linkages, practical sound management, and the adherence and practice of the good governance agenda. So I am seeing that I am a little beyond my allocated time, but we will have further opportunities to delve into the blue economy a little bit more. But we wanted to give you an appreciation of how vast it is, how integrated it is, and how you, as a citizen and resident of Antigua and Barbuda, can play your role in this largely untapped sector. Let me just give one example in terms of sustainability, and I've given it before in other fora. And it's something I saw maybe, I'm thinking now, maybe 25 years ago. I am hoping, I say all the time, I hope the trade is still going on. Let us look at one of our a marine resource, such as the conch, the queen conch, which is a part of our culture and our culinary diets here in Antigua and Barbuda. Very well sought after, prepared in all different types of ways. And I think the largest conch shelf in the Caribbean is in the Bahamas, right? But we have a fairly appreciable conch bed here in Antigua and Barbuda as well, conch shelf. And so in harvesting the queen conch, we usually only use the meat within the shell, the conch itself. And then you go to certain places, especially some of the fisheries landing sites, and you just see the conch shells strewn there. If we are serious about our commitment to sustainability, to using every part of the resource, we have got to, coming back to Maleka's discussion about technical and vocational education and training, we have got to envision that we could have a set of artisans who are able to convert that part of that resource that is generally just thrown away. I know there are people who use it to line their gardens, but several years ago, this is before, the queen conch getting on the CITES list, and there was a period where it was illegal to trade in it and so on. I came across a lady in the Ebenezer community, and she had used that conch shell to create a lamp. And I just ask you to envision for a moment a regular white bulb inside that queen conch. And so that when you plug it in, the kaleidoscope of colors from coral to pink to, vanilla to, it was a phenomenal product. And I would buy them every time I came back to Antigua, and I'd take them back to the US as gifts for my friends, my favorite professors, and so on. And I'm saying the amount of conch that is harvested in this country, we could, when we are negotiating with hoteliers, particularly those that are going to be investing in eco plants, say to them, listen, we have an industry here where we use the conch shell in our artifact design and production, and we are encouraging you to utilize that product within your hotel plant. And these lamps at the time, they were just a shell that you plugged in. You could put it on a table, a little side table. But can you imagine such an artisan working with somebody like a joiner and getting a lovely crafted and designed base and putting that conch shell at the top of that base? I mean, what a phenomenal product, locally produced by our people who have been trained for this new economy. And we say here, the possibilities are endless, but what you need is a government that is committed, that is thinking, that is passionate, that is excited about the new economy and society for Antigua and Barbuda. And I'm going to say again, the world is getting away from us, and we must redesign and re engineer our economy for the benefit of our people. Thank you very much. Back to you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much, Madam Leader. Excellent presentation, as usual. Jamal says here, what we lack on land in terms of resources and scale, we can make up by sustainably maximizing our marine resources and ancillary services. Jamal's comments are always on point here, right? So once again, we've had an amazing presentation. You have feedback, questions, comments, feel free to drop them in the comments or in our inbox. For those of you who are just joining us, you missed plenty. But this video will be available to watch again once the live ends. It will become available right on our Facebook page, and you can share it with anyone who you think would benefit from hearing from the Democratic National Alliance. And we see, well, on front end we have some our applause happening here in the comment section. Thank you so much, guys. That was definitely an excellent and informative presentation, and the type of imagination I have now, I want one of those conch shell lamps because I think it'll look pretty cool. So I can definitely see something like that happening. I see the importance of thinking outside of the box and applying that creativity to things that other persons would not have thought about. There's a lot of potential right here in our 108 square miles, and I think it is very important that we tap into those skills. As we've been mentioning for the entire evening, how important it is for us to tap into all of those skills and talents that our people have. Hammer Films says, those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. Most definitely, most definitely. And we should and must always learn from mistakes of the past and try not to repeat them. Nothing will ever be perfect, but my one of the mantras that I have is, perfection is the enemy of greatness. You have to try in order to get there, and that in itself is an entrepreneurial mindset, or what one of my mentors and I have dubbed the MacGyver mindset. You work with what you have, work with what you have until you get where you want to be, and that sort of mindset can only be cultivated if that enabling environment exists. And that is the type of environment that a DNA government will enable, right? So Jamal is commenting here about, yes, conch shells. I definitely want one of those. I definitely want one of those too. Thank you so much for those. Thank you so much for the comments. Now, as I would have said earlier, the night is winding down. We've been here for quite a while, but we have been educated, we have been entertained, we have been enlightened, we have been edified. I mean, I could use every adjective in the book. Tonight has been an awesome night. All of our presenters, from our guest speaker, Mr. Stanley Barreto, to our founding members, colleague Bruce, colleague Maleka, our team leader from St. Paul, colleague Gamil, and of course, Madam Leader Joanne Messiah, would have gone into quite a few things tonight, continuing the conversation that we've had, that we started having last month, and we will continue to have as time progresses. These conversations are not one off, they are a start of something new, fresh, and dynamic. When we're promoting these, we like to tell you guys this is not a rally, this is a conversation. There's no shouting, no horn blowing, straight to the issues and the facts. Because if we keep repeating the things we do over and over again, we will only get the same results. And we're not new, fresh, and dynamic for nothing. We're here to do things a bit differently. So, as we wrap up, once again, I'd like to encourage persons to please take a look at the newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter so next time it comes out, you get it straight in your email inbox and it's there for you to see. We have it in a PDF format if you're that type of person. We also have it in a right on the website if you are that type of person. You can share all of the individual articles and they will be shared throughout the entire week on our social media. So keep watching these spaces. So if you are not following us, follow us on Facebook at DNA.268, on Twitter, DNA_268, on Instagram, also DNA_268. All of these will be shared in the coming week. We're encouraging you to go and please have a look from poetry, politics, policies, everything in it. I guarantee you that. And it'll just keep getting better and better as we go along. Jamal says, true, no harm, confusion, interrupt nigga. most definitely. It's always great to hear something. So before we go, Madam Leader, I'm just gonna hand it back over to you and you can take us out.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. That last comment had me chuckling a bit there. It has been a wonderful night, I think. I certainly enjoyed all the presentations. I enjoyed your comments and your feedback. And I want to encourage you to read our newsletter. It is a phenomenal production. And I want to thank everybody who would have made their contribution to making that newsletter a possibility for today. It was launched today. It really is a labor of love. And the feedback so far has been just phenomenally encouraging. So, having said that, this is a people's publication. And so we invite writers and contributors to send in your articles, your poems, your views, whatever it is. It's for all of us. We want to hear from the creatives. We want to hear from those of you who have talents that you're just keeping to yourself, writing your poems and so on, your short stories, whatever, and just keeping them home. We invite you to send them to us, and we will find a way to include it in our newsletter. We're promising twice monthly publication of it. In fact, we have some articles that have come in for the second one from persons like yourselves, and we look forward to receiving more. I also want to invite you, as a personal appeal, I want to invite you to become members of the DNA. Our application form can be found on our website, and it's a very simple process. You fill it out, you can send it in electronically, you can drop it off physically if you don't have those resources available to you. But this is a movement of people driven by people who want to answer the clarion call for a renewed patriotic undertaking to redesign and re-engineer the new economy for Antigua and Barbuda. And so I look forward to receiving your applications. I also want to, having said that, we are also renewing and repeating our call for persons to become team leaders and to send in your applications to become team leaders. Because what we say in the DNA, we are building an army of leaders. Because in the new dispensation, we don't see the cabinet as the only set of leaders in Antigua and Barbuda. We don't know everything. We are going to need persons like yourselves working in the private sector, working in the public sector, working at a community level through our various organizations there, in our parish councils, in order to make things work as they should in a real country in Antigua and Barbuda. And I also wish to invite you, those of you who are here this evening, to join us on May 27th, Thursday, for our welcome and orientation sessions. We do this every month, the last Thursday of every month. And I believe this would be a what, fifth or sixth one. And it's exciting. It's a shorter, it's short and concise. You hear from the leaders, we hear from you, and you get a better sense as to what our organization is about. And we look forward to welcoming you there. So just go on our page or our Facebook page, on any of our social media platforms, and you'll find information there. But the night is fast spent. Thank you for spending the evening with us. We value your time. We value you. And Madam Moderator, again, you did an outstanding job. The internet did hold. For that, I'm grateful for the most part. And to my colleagues, thank you for the work that you would have put in making your presentations so impactful, so prolific, so profound. And of course, we also have to thank those of our members who are working behind the scenes, our colleague Louis, who is our technical director, doing an awesome job. And to every member of the DNA, every executive member, every ordinary member who shares ideas with us, thank you so much. We appreciate you. So have a good evening. Be safe. Continue to practice. Continue to practice all of the protocols for this pandemic in which we're still living. And, I could not end, and it was not my intention to end, without saying a profound thank you to our lead-off guest speaker this evening, Stanley Barreto. Stanley, you say you were shy. I didn't see any shyness in that presentation. I saw pure confidence. You know your craft, you know the subject area, and we continue to look forward to working with you collaboratively as we fine-tune and shape our policies for sustainable energy, renewable energy, which is going to drive the new Antigua and Barbuda. So folks, thank you so much. Good evening.
Thank you, Madam Leader. Thank you, everyone, for spending some time with us. Thank you to all of the panelists and our guest speaker. It has been a pleasure, as usual. We will see you very soon. Good night.